I'm Chef Dan Frenette, and today we're going to take two of my favorite pasta dishes. We're going to combine them into one. We're going to make gnocchi, and we're going to make carbonara. To make the gnocchi, we're going to use butternut squash and duck eggs and fried sage. And to make the carbonara, we're going to use farmer's bacon and duck egg yolks. Mix them together. I think you're really going to like what we do today. Welcome to Market to Table. I'm Dan Frenette, and we're at the Stop Farmers Market at the Artscape Wychwood Barns. I'm shopping for butternut squash, herbs, cheeses, eggs, and bacon. Let's get going. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
I'm good.
It's great to see you again.
Good to see you, Dan.
So I'm looking for two things today. I'm looking for a big chunk of bacon, and I'm looking for sliced bacon. Can you help me out?
Yes, sure. So we have this piece,
Okay.
and we also have some sliced bacon for you.
Fantastic. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the animals are raised?
My husband and I raise all the pigs so that they have access to fresh air, lots of space. They actually accompany me when I go do the calves. They're free to run. Yeah.
So they're happy pigs?
They are extremely happy. I think that people don't realize just how intelligent pigs are.
I understand that you don't process the animals on the farm.
No. By law, it has to go to an inspected abattoir.
All right. So it's real bacon.
It is real bacon.
And it's my favorite ingredient.
Very good.
Bacon, bacon, bacon. I do love it.
I have some organic duck eggs here, free range. We raise them on our farm.
What's the difference between a duck egg and a chicken egg?
They're richer in flavor. They have 1.5 times the protein. The egg yolk itself is massive inside these eggs.
So I'm also looking for some butternut squash.
They're all different sizes. They were harvested in the fall. These are storage crops. The longer they're in storage, the sweeter they get. So This will be pretty sweet now.
I'm looking for a hard cheese to replace a Parmesan.
Then I would love to suggest pecorino.
Okay.
I like to call it a cross between Parmesan and mozzarella.
So I'm also looking for a soft cheese, something that I could replace a ricotta with.
May I suggest our Stracchino cheese?
Okay.
It's got a nice texture to it.
Well, this is a daikon radish. This is a beautiful garnish.
Perfect. It's really good.
These are 14 days old.
Fantastic.
So lots of vitality, life force. Beauty is everything, and color. If you're looking for a garnish, flowers are just starting to poke their heads up.
My bags are full. Now let's get back to the kitchen and start cooking. I'm here in our amazing kitchen, and I'm back from shopping from the Stop Farmers Market at the Artscape Wychwood Barns. We're going to be making a really great dish today. We're going to start with butternut squash, flour, duck eggs, stracchino, pecorino, lemons, sage, chives, micro basil, and last but not least, bacon, my personal favorite. We've got some staples to help me prepare this dish: salt, freshly ground pepper, nutmeg, and of course, olive oil. All right, so to start this dish, we need butternut squash. To make life really easy, all I've done is cut it in half, scoop out the flesh, oil it up lightly with olive oil, and then we're going to season it with our kosher salt. And then we're going to roast it real slow. Some chefs like to do this a little bit quicker, get a little bit deeper caramelization. I want to do it low and slow so that it gets really soft and all that natural sugar comes out to it, all right? So 250, probably about 3 hours. We'll see this in a little while. All right, this is done. This is one that I made earlier. We're gonna pull it out, let it cool off a little bit. Obviously, I don't want to burn my hands. So as this is cooling, we'll set it aside, and I need to start plating up, again, my favorite, the bacon. So we need to crisp this up, because this is gonna be our garnish for the dish. So I'm gonna teach you a little trick to keep the bacon really nice and flat so we can utilize its beautiful presentation. First thing you need, baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Then, more parchment paper, another baking sheet, and a very heavy-duty pan, preferably cast iron, because that's going to weight it down, keep the bacon really nice and flat. And this is also going to go in the oven, probably for about 25 minutes at 250 degrees, okay? Perfect. So while that's happening, this is relatively cool. We can start peeling this and getting it ready for our dough. Because we left it whole, skin on, we're not going to end up wasting any of this. I find when you peel it with a knife the way that everybody else sort of does, you end up wasting a lot of this beautiful squash. So we've got this nice and peeled. Set aside what we need for this recipe. And the great thing is about squash is that once you've cooked it, you're gonna have it for a couple meals. There's nothing wrong with that. We've got our beautiful butternut squash. It's caramelized, it's soft. We're ready to start making our gnocchi dough, okay? So please, again, let me touch base on this oven. It's really intimidating, it's commercial. It's gonna speed up the process for myself. But as I'm walking you through this process, when I tell you 250 degrees at 3 hours, that's for you guys at home. For me, it's gonna take a lot less time in this oven, all right? So again, beautiful butternut squash, really soft, caramelized, lots of natural sugar, great color. We're gonna start making our gnocchi dough, okay? Instead of regular eggs, we're gonna use duck eggs. The reason for this, really vibrant, really rich in flavor. The bright, bright, bright yellow yolks from this is gonna go really well with our orange butternut squash. So our gnocchi, our little dumplings, are gonna be really, really vibrant in color. When we start caramelizing them in the pan, we're gonna have a great result. I can't wait. So first things first, I've got to puree this in my food processor. This is all pureed, we're ready to go. So, one thing to take into consideration when making this dish is that typically gnocchi's made with potatoes. Potatoes, really high starch content, really low water content in comparison to butternut squash. So, we're gonna take out our butternut squash, get rid of this blade so I don't do something foolish like cut myself. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna reduce it a little bit, taking out all of that water. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with sort of too loose of a dough for our gnocchi, and that's definitely not what we want. We want them to be fluffy, very airy, full of beautiful flavor, rich in color. So, set this aside. And now I'm gonna start reducing this, extracting all of that moisture, and I'm gonna do it on these induction burners. Really great, really energy efficient way of cooking. Works on magnetic energy. The great thing about these, plug into a residential plug, they heat up really quickly, they cool down really quickly. They're really safe, really energy efficient, and they take up very little room, all right? So as this is happening, we're gonna have to start getting the rest of our dough ready for it. So, first things first, our duck eggs, all right? Again, these are really hard shells, much harder than a regular chicken egg. So you're gonna end up with, for one, better shelf life, two, harder time cracking it. So hopefully I don't screw this up. And you'll see the size of the yolk. The yolk is huge, really vibrant yellow. We're gonna be able to mix this in with our butternut squash once all that moisture comes out of it. We'll start making our dough, and then we're gonna form really long ropes with the dough itself. Start making our dumplings so that we can start putting together our dish. Now we've got this beautiful squash. We've got all of the moisture has been extracted from it. It's still really fluffy, but now it's nice and firm. So this isn't gonna mess up our gnocchi dough here. Scoop this into the food processor. Make sure we don't waste any of this. All right. Now, we need to add the Stracchino. All right, this is a beautiful, beautiful cheese. It's an Italian cheese, and it comes from the word stracco, which essentially means lazy, which I find quite humorous. And what it essentially means is that the cows have been grazing up in the mountains the entire day, and they're tired. And they come back down from the hillside, back down into their pastures, and that's when the milk is extracted. And what that does is apparently it makes the milk far richer, more flavorful, higher in fat. So essentially you're making perfect cheese, if you ask me. So we're gonna take some of this, and notice I've peeled back just the outer layer of this, because I don't want that rubbery texture within the gnocchi itself. I just want the center, that really creamy, creamy, creamy flavor, because that's gonna allow for us to have really, really fluffy butternut squash gnocchi, okay? So without making a mess, squeeze that out. We'll reserve that for later for a salad or something like that, because you never want to waste cheese in my books. All right? So, now we need to make some more noise. These are really well incorporated now. We're gonna take this out, we're gonna add it into our egg yolk, and we're gonna start mixing everything together. I'm really excited about this dish. We're combining essentially two of my favorite dishes of all time, gnocchi and carbonara. If you ask me, you can't go wrong with that. Got our blended duck egg. Set aside our whisk. Need a rubber spatula. Let me just pull out this blade so again, I don't do anything foolish and cut myself. We're gonna scoop out all of this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ingredients here. It's our Stracchino and butternut squash pureed together. Really light, really fluffy, really high in fat, really high in natural sugars. It's gonna be awesome. Because the egg yolk, or the egg itself, is quite large, it's still gonna be very liquidy. All right, so we're gonna slowly incorporate these together, and then we're gonna start adding flour, small amounts at a time. It's very important that we add small amounts at a time, otherwise we're gonna end up with a really, really, really dense dough. That's not what we're after. We want something light, fluffy, just slightly sticky to the touch. Now, before we go any further, a little bit of seasoning. Make all those flavors pop. We'll set this guy aside. Now I need to add some more flavors to our ingredients here. Got these beautiful herbs, just grown for us for this show. It's gonna be awesome. We got sage. I don't think it gets much fresher than this. We're gonna snip it all off of this bush. We're gonna chiffonade it, which is essentially a julienne of a leafy vegetable. Set that aside. Sage and butternut squash, classic flavor combination. Once this is finely chopped up, we're gonna mix it in. We're gonna add some lemon zest. We're gonna add some pecorino. The reason for that, lemon zest makes everything pop. That's very important. I use it almost as a seasoning. I suggest you do the same thing at home. You can really alleviate the dish that you're making when you start adding lemon zest to it, all right? So, lemons, microplane, a little bit of zest. And after we're done zesting this, we gotta chop it up too. We don't want big chunks of it. We really just want the flavor. We're not after the texture of this at all right? Set that aside. Real fine chop. That's done. Now, the pecorino. A little bit of pecorino in. What that's gonna do is give it even more richness. As well as pecorino, really peppery, really full flavor. It's gonna accent with the lemon zest, the Stracchino, butternut squash, and sage really, really well, all right? A little bit of this in. Now you could be a little bit more generous, depending on how much you like cheese. If this wasn't on camera, I'd be putting a lot more in, but I don't want anybody to judge me. So, we're gonna set that aside. Mix all of these ingredients together, and then we're ready to start adding our flour. We've got our beautiful mixture. We're ready to start making gnocchi dough. Take the flour. We're gonna add it in really slowly, small batches at a time. And as I said before, we want a really, really, really fluffy gnocchi. Okay, so that's why we're gonna add it in really slowly. If we start adding it in far too quickly, we're gonna end up with a really, really doughy, starchy, not pillowy. We're after pillowy, all right? We're getting there. Maybe another scoop or two, and I think we'll be all set. Keep mixing, make a big mess. It's the best part about flour. There's no such thing as working with flour clean. Probably one more, and I think we'll be all set. Now we're starting to feel a little bit of a dough here, so we get to get messy. Set that aside. Lightly flour our surface. Now we're all set. We're gonna start playing with dough and making a big mess. Best part about playing with food is getting messy. Here we go. So, see how light and fluffy this still is? I can ply it with my hands, I can move it around, and it's still a little bit sticky. And that's kind of what we're after. Now again, once you start feeling it with your hands, the most important part is that you start to feel if you're actually gonna be able to make these gnocchis or not. So again, it's still too sticky for my liking. Keep forming it and forming it and forming it. And really, you want to get it to a point where, see how my hands are really stuck, covered in this dough? Once you're basically ready for the gnocchi dough, your hands won't be stuck with it anymore. Keep kneading and kneading and kneading. We're getting very close now. It's not so sticky anymore, but it's still really fluffy, really airy, really pillowy. Once I absorb all of this flour into the dough, I think we're going to be all set. The dough is now complete. You can see how nice and light it is, really pillowy. Now we're going to start forming our gnocchis. Our dough is pretty much ready to go. There's one more ingredient I got to add, but before I do that, just so I'm not waiting around for water to boil, I'm going to turn on my induction burners. These will heat up really quickly. I'll have boiling water in no time. Back to the gnocchi dough. Got my handy dandy nutmeg grinder made by Peugeot. It's fantastic. Add this in. The reason why I'm doing it now is so I can really see how much nutmeg I'm adding. If I added it in before, nutmeg would just sort of disappear within the dough itself, and I wouldn't really be able to see the amount. Perfect. So that's going to be enough, and that's really going to pop. Fold it all together. Got our beautiful dough. Now, we have to separate this dough because we're obviously not going to make one big gnocchi. As enjoyable as that would be, it's not what we're after today. So, we're going to separate it. And because I'm only cooking for myself today, possibly the crew if they're lucky, I'm only going to do a small amount of this. Set that aside for later on. We're going to need a touch more flour on the board. Now we're going to start making a long rope. And one thing to always look for when you order a gnocchi in a restaurant, if it says homemade on the menu, and your gnocchi comes out and every single piece is the exact same size, I hope you know what I'm getting at here. It's obviously been made with a machine. Handmade gnocchi is not going to be that consistent. It's going to be slightly different sizes, slightly different shapes. Keep rolling it out, and now size of the rope, it's really all preference. If you want to make larger gnocchis, you make a larger rope. You want smaller gnocchis, smaller dumplings, you make a more narrow rope. All right, here we go. Chop off the end piece and go through. I like gnocchis about yay big, probably about an inch. That way every time you bite into it, you really get to experience that texture. I find when the gnocchis are too small, you really don't appreciate all that flavor, all the pillowy texture that you're getting from the amount of effort we put into the dough itself. So, we're gonna set these aside. We're gonna blanch them once that water is boiling. We can set them aside on our plate with the rest of the dough. And again, don't be too careful about how you're handling these. They're not gonna all look perfect, and that's just fine. Now, I've gotta remove the bacon from the oven. Last thing I wanna do is burn the bacon. So if my trick has worked, this bacon's still gonna be really flat, but really nice and crispy now. Let's see how we did. Remove the parchment, and as you can see, we've got beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bacon, really crispy, really flat. It's gonna be perfect for our garnishing. So our bacon's nice and crispy. We're gonna set it aside and use this as a garnish. While we're on the topic of garnishing, I'm gonna teach you another really cool trick. One of my favorite things about cooking is presentation. Everybody eats with their eyes first. So if you can make something look really, really sexy, everybody's going to enjoy it. As well as, it's part of the recipe that takes the least amount of work, but you can really start to showcase your ability as a cook. So I'm going to teach you a really cool trick to show off to your friends at home. Parchment lined baking sheet, more pecorino. As I said before, I have a bit of a romance for cheese. So, we're going to microplane this into little piles, and you'll find out why shortly. So, continue to microplane this, many different piles, because trust me, you're going to want a few extra so you can eat these. One of the most sought after menu items, or words or phrases on a menu, is crispy. So what we're going to do is we're going to make crispy cheese. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So my oven's at 350. Got nice little piles. Make sure they're all relatively even. We're going to put them in the oven at 350 for probably about 10 minutes until it melts, starts to get a bit crispy. My pecorino is almost there. We're going to get started on one of our last ingredients, more bacon. Can never go wrong with more bacon. So, As I said before, we're making a carbonara. Carbonara is not carbonara without bacon. So we're gonna dice up some of this beautiful farmer's bacon. I've been assured that this bacon came from happy pigs. The animals were treated very well, fed well, free range. We're not cooped up in a tiny little jail cell, as I like to call them. Dice up the bacon. We're gonna crisp up the bacon. And opposed to using any butter or olive oil to cook these gnocchis, I'm gonna utilize the bacon fat. Might be a touch salty for some, not for me. I'm gonna dice this up. We're gonna go straight into a hot pan. Start crisping it. While that's happening, I'm gonna pull out my pecorino. I'm gonna blanch my gnocchis, and I'm gonna fry the sage in the bacon fat as well to really start getting some depth into that flavor, all right? Fire up my induction burners again. Straight into the pan. Let the bacon start to sit. As I said before, my pecorino cheese is probably done. Oh yeah, that's gonna be perfect. I put these spoons on there, as I mentioned to you before. I'm cooking it in a commercial oven. I've got a fan going, it's convection, it's blowing my parchment paper all over the place. So if you have convection oven at home, make sure that you weight down that parchment paper, otherwise parchment paper is gonna go everywhere. You're not gonna end up with these really nice pecorino wafers, as I like to call them. Bacon's starting to crisp. I'm gonna render out that fat. I'm gonna set this aside. Now, the key with these pecorino crisps is once you've got them golden brown in the oven, when they come out of the oven, they're not gonna be fully crispy until they hit room temperature again. The reason is all that fat comes out. You need the fat to go back in. Once the fat goes back into that cheese, you're gonna end up with really nice, crispy pecorino wafers. That's gonna add a really nice texture to our butternut squash gnocchi. This bacon's coming along. We're starting to get a really nice amount of bacon fat in that pan. As that's happening, we're gonna start getting the rest of our ingredients ready. So, back to more sage. As I said before, sage and butternut squash, they're really good friends. They get along really, really well. I wish I could take credit for coming up with this flavor combination. I can't. It's a classic and it's delicious, and there's a reason it's still around, because it works. So another chiffonade of the sage. And the last thing that we're gonna be garnishing with, aside from our crispy bacon, our pecorino crisps, we're gonna add a little bit of fresh chives. More color contrast, really makes that dish pop. Sage goes in now to start crisping up. Man, these induction burners are amazing. So, this is starting to smell a little ridiculous. I'm getting quite hungry. I need to start making this gnocchi. We've got our beautiful little pillows that we set aside earlier. We're gonna start dropping them in. Perfect. These cook very quickly. So I want to make sure I have either a slotted spoon, a strainer, or a spider, as we call them in the kitchen. Give this a little stir. They'll be done as soon as they float. Once they float, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out and, being very careful, shake out that extra liquid. From there, it's going straight into the frying pan. If I add that extra liquid in with the bacon fat, we're prone to accidents. This is coming along really, really well. Getting crispy. We've got lots of nice bacon fat in there. I'm seriously starting to salivate. This is getting a little ridiculous. Give these a nice little stir. Turn it up because I'm impatient now and I'm getting very hungry. I'm sure the crew is as well. Oh man, this is gonna be fantastic. You know what? I'm sick of waiting. I have to do this. I just have to do this. Sitting in front of me, it's gonna happen. crispy cheese. Can't say no to that. Bacon's close. Cheese is definitely there. These are starting to float. Give them about 30 more seconds and then we'll be good to go. As that's happening, that last garnish I was talking about, some chives. Just a few. We're not going for the oniony flavor that we're going to get from the chives. We really just want that color contrast. Chop these up really fine. Bacon's crispy. Pillows are floating. Cheese is crispy. Dan's very happy. Perfect. We've got our chives. We're ready to go. I'm going to toss these into the bacon fat. Again, being very careful to shake out that excess liquid. I don't want any accidents, especially for yourselves at home. And we can take this off the heat. Bacon's really hot. Bacon fat's really hot. In they go. If there was more liquid, that could have been catastrophic. I do not want that to happen. We got the fried sage. It's changed color. That's why we're replacing the color with the chives. So we get all this beautiful color combinations happening. Oh man, this is starting to smell really, really, really good. I can't wait to plate this up. It's gonna be fun. Set our chives aside. Let's get our bacon ready to garnish. We're gonna slice it down the center. We're gonna set this aside. We're gonna gently peel the pecorino crisp away. That's one. These are all for me. The crew cannot have any. Get our saute. Turn this off. Our gnocchis are basically ready to go. Now we're gonna start plating. I've turned the heat off on this. I'm gonna add a touch of the blanching water, and I'll show you why in a second. Just a small amount with the world's smallest ladle. Put this down. We've got 2 more beautiful duck yolks. The reason I turn this off the heat, I don't want scrambled eggs. We're gonna add in 1. We're gonna add in 2. Now, we've got a real carbonara. Mix this all together. Let those yolks cook very gently with that pasta water. Now it's time to start plating. It's very easy to make things look very tasty when you're plating on beautiful plateware. I've got these amazing plates here from Corby Hall. Really, really excited. It's probably one of my favorite pasta plates to plate on. That really wide rim really draws the attention right into the gnocchi, and that's what we're after. So again, color contrast, crispy bacon, crispy cheese. Stand that straight up. Last but not least, thought I forgot about that micro basil, didn't you? Just a tiny amount, because this is going to really go a long way. Lay that around. We wipe the rim down so I don't look like a rookie. And for final touch, I'm just going to put this lid on here. Now I'm going to walk away. That was awesome. Here we are with our butternut squash and stracchino gnocchi. We've plated it up the same way we would with a carbonara. Farmer's bacon, duck egg yolk, micro basil, and pecorino crisps. I hope you enjoy. That's it from us today. I'd like to thank the folks at WD College for letting me use their amazing kitchen. For more information on the incredible kitchen equipment that they represent, please check out this website. We're compiling all of our recipes from this series in a new cookbook entitled Market to Table. For more information on that, please check out this website. I also have to thank the people from Stop Farmers Market at Artscape Wychwood Barns for letting me use their amazing ingredients. I had a lot of fun playing with them. And lastly, and definitely not least, I have to thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Market to Table. I'll see you next time.